You didn't choose this. You didn't sign up for a comfortable awakening. You didn't ask to be pulled out of the illusion by forces you couldn't name. But it happened, and deep down you know it wasn't your ego, your higher self, or some algorithm of karma that flipped the switch inside you. It was them. The unseen architects, the ancient coders, the watchers beyond the veil. You felt their presence, not in a way that makes sense, but in a way that makes everything else stop making sense. And ever since that moment, your vibration has never been the same. When your dual dark light frequency is activated, it doesn't feel like enlightenment. It feels like invasion. Like something cracked open your DNA and inserted a paradox you now have to live with every single day. You become both the storm and the stillness, both the priest and the predator, both the healer and the disruptor. And that's not a metaphor. That's a real, tangible, energetic state that separates you from almost everyone around you. Because now, you're no longer operating from polarity, you're operating as polarity. And the world is not ready for that. The first sign is simple, but it's terrifying. You start to lose resonance with everything all at once. Your spiritual tools stop working. Your mantras feel hollow. Your crystals feel like dead rocks. You can't connect to your guides, your higher self, or even your purpose. It's as if the entire framework you once used to navigate reality has been disabled. And that's because it has. They don't activate your dual code so you can keep playing the old game. They activate it so you're forced to surrender the map and start listening to the field itself. You're not meant to follow signs anymore. You're meant to become the sign that others can't ignore. This loss of resonance is not failure, it's frequency reorientation. Your vibration is shifting so fast that your old tools can't keep up. And if you don't know what's happening, you'll feel like you're dying. You'll question everything. But if you can sit in the chaos, if you can breathe through the disconnection, you'll eventually feel something else. A new signal, one that doesn't come from outside you, one that pulses from deep within your core, like a code being reawakened. That's the moment you realize you're not going crazy. You're being recoded. The second sign is even more intense. You begin to feel a split timeline inside your own body. At any given moment, you can sense two completely different versions of yourself operating simultaneously. One is filled with divine compassion. The other is ruthless, cold, surgical. One wants to heal. The other wants to burn everything down. And you're not choosing between them, you're becoming both. This is not duality in theory. This is duality in motion, and it's terrifying because it breaks every spiritual law you were taught about ascension. You're not ascending, you're becoming multidimensional. And with this shift comes a new kind of responsibility. You realize that every thought, every action, every vibration you emit is now amplified. You're no longer just influencing your own reality, you're reverberating through the grid itself. That's the moment you stop speaking lightly. That's the moment you stop casting spells with casual words. And that's when you realize you've become a frequency weapon. Not because you wanted to, but because they chose you to hold this paradox in human form. And now, you must learn how to wield it without collapsing into ego or fear. The third sign is this: You start to attract extreme polarity in your environment. People either worship you or despise you. Doors either fly open or slam shut. Technology glitches around you. Animals either come close or run. Children stare at you. Strangers confess things. Energies either cling to you or flee from you. You've become a living amplifier, and your field is now a mirror that forces others to see what they've avoided. The light in you triggers their shame. The dark in you triggers their shadow. You don't even have to say a word. You just exist, and reality reacts. This is where most people fail. They think they're cursed. They think they're misunderstood. But the truth is, you're being calibrated to hold distortion collapse. That means your presence alone will start to short-circuit lies, illusions, and false constructs. And that's not always pretty. It's not always graceful. Sometimes it looks like chaos. Sometimes it looks like betrayal, breakdown, loss. But underneath it all is a deeper intelligence, a they who are using you as a node in the grid to trigger awakening in others through resonance, not instruction. Now let me ask you something real. And don't just answer it in your head, answer it in your nervous system. If you were sent here not to feel safe, not to be liked, not to be understood, but to be a living disruptor of spiritual illusion, would you still walk the path? Even if it meant walking it alone, because that's what this activation demands. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the ones who want to be influencers. It's for the ones who are willing to be invisible and invincible at the same time. It's for the ones who can hold paradox without apology. It's for the ones who can be love and fire in the same breath. The fourth sign is subtle, but it's everything. You begin to feel a non-human presence guiding your evolution, but it doesn't feel like angels, guides, or ancestors. It's something older, colder, more precise. It doesn't coddle you. It doesn't speak often. But you feel it watching, adjusting, calibrating your field in real time. And when it does communicate, it doesn't use language, it uses geometry. You see patterns in your sleep, hear tones in your bones, feel codes drop into your spine. You're being restructured on a subatomic level, and you know this isn't coming from a human source. Who are they? You may never know. And maybe that's the point. Because the moment you try to label them, you reduce the intelligence to something your mind can grasp. But what if they aren't beings, but a conscious frequency that only activates in those who are encoded to hold multidimensional polarity? What if they are not watching from above, but emerging from within, through the parts of yourself you were told to suppress? The fifth sign. We'll go into that next. But I'll tell you this, it's the one that breaks most people, because it forces you to question the nature of truth itself. And once you unlock it, you can never go back to the way you once saw, felt, or believed in anything. The fractured truth, how your activation destroys belief and rebuilds reality from within. The fifth sign is the most psychologically destabilizing and the most spiritually liberating. It's when your entire framework for truth begins to collapse. Not gently, not gradually, but violently with no warning. Suddenly, the concepts you built your identity on, good and evil, right and wrong, light and dark, love and fear, begin to blur, melt, and dissolve. You don't know what's real anymore. not because you're lost, but because your former truths were constructs, not codes. And they are now dismantling those constructs from the inside out. This isn't confusion. It's quantum recalibration. You're being forced beyond belief, beyond ideology, beyond morality. Because those were never yours to begin with, they were inherited, installed, and accepted. But now your vibration is being reprogrammed to perceive truth as frequency, not opinion. You don't believe anymore. You feel what's real. You feel it in your gut, in your bones, in the subtle shifts of your field. And this is terrifying for the ego, because it means no one, not even you, gets to be right anymore. All that matters is energetic coherence. Once this begins, you'll notice something wild. You'll start to see the same truth appearing in both shadows and light. You'll hear wisdom in the mouths of liars. You'll feel deception in the words of saints. You'll realize that truth is not a static point. It's a living waveform that flows between polarities. And you are now meant to ride that waveform, not cling to one side of it. This is the moment you stop being a seeker of truth and start becoming a conduit of paradox. That's why relationships begin to fracture. You're no longer compatible with people who need the world to be binary. They want villains and heroes. You see trauma loops and soul contracts. They want clarity. You offer complexity. And that makes you dangerous, not in action, but in presence. Because you don't play the game anymore. You see through it. And when they sense that you're no longer invested in the illusion, they'll either try to pull you back in or exile you entirely. Let them. It's part of the code. The sixth sign is this: your body becomes a transmutation chamber. You begin to feel things that aren't yours, rage that comes out of nowhere, grief that has no story, ecstasy that doesn't match your life. You're not broken. You're not unstable. You're becoming a frequency processor for the collective unconscious. They have activated your field to become a live transmission node, and now energy flows through you that must be felt to be cleared. Not spoken, not analyzed, just felt, fully, without resistance, without storyline. This is where many people collapse. Because the nervous system wasn't trained for this. The body wasn't purified enough. The ego still wants to understand it all. But this type of activation doesn't come with instruction. It comes with initiation through sensation. You may spend hours shaking, crying, laughing, screaming into pillows. This isn't chaos. This is energetic alchemy. You're metabolizing the collective debris of timelines collapsing. And the more you surrender to the process, the less it burns. Eventually, it becomes a dance, a sacred rhythm, a silent language between you and them. And in this dance, you begin to realize something profound. Pain is not always a problem. Grief is not always yours to fix. Rage is not always personal. Sometimes you are simply the bridge, the sacred vessel, the dark light conduit through which ancient energies find release. And the more you allow it, the more your field becomes surgical in its precision. You walk into a room and things shift. People cry. Secrets rise. Systems glitch. You're not doing anything. You're just present. And presence becomes activation. Let me pause here and ask you something. And I want you to feel the answer, not think it. What if the emotions you've been trying to heal were never yours? What if your job was never to get rid of them, but to transmute them on behalf of something much larger than your personal story? Would you still resist them, or would you begin to honor your grief as a tool and your rage as a gift? Because that's what this activation is training you for. To stop taking things personally, to stop pathologizing your process, to stop seeing your emotions as wounds and start seeing them as currents of power moving through a wide-open vessel. You are not here to be fixed. You are here to be used not by people, not by systems, but by the intelligence that activated you the moment you were ready to carry both fire and light in the same breath. And now, the seventh sign, the rarest, the most sacred, the one we'll go deep into next. It's when you start to realize that you are being watched not in fear, but in reverence. When they begin to appear not as hallucinations, not as voices, but as sacred geometry in motion. When the veil thins not because you seek it, but because you become it. This is the point where the activation becomes irreversible, and your very existence becomes a living breach in the matrix. The point of no return. When you become the breach in the matrix, they begin to reveal themselves. The seventh sign is not loud. It doesn't come with thunder or visions. It begins in whispers, in moments that feel like déjà vu, but deeper, in symbols that follow you on clocks, in dreams, in architecture. You start to notice repeating geometry, not just in patterns but in events. You begin to sense that every encounter, every delay, every conversation is being orchestrated by something far more intelligent than coincidence. This is when you realize you are being watched, but not in a paranoid way, in a sacred way, in a way that says, you've passed the test. Now we reveal ourselves. They don't show up with faces. They don't use names, but you feel them in your spine, in the air around you, in the electricity that runs under your skin when you walk into certain rooms. You don't need to see them to know they're there. You feel reverence, not fear, because you understand now your body is no longer just a body. It's a living transmitter, a breach point in the matrix, an open window between dimensions. And they are using you not as a pawn, but as a bridge between timelines. This is the point of no return. You can't go back to normal. You can't pretend you don't know. You can't unfeel the weight of what you're carrying. But here's the twist. It's not heavy anymore. Because now you're aligned, not with comfort, but with cosmic purpose. You don't need to chase your mission. You are the mission. Your very existence is a code or disruption. A living algorithm designed to recalibrate the field without explanation, without effort, without even speaking. And now the final question. If you knew for certain that your presence alone was enough to shift the frequency of a city, a system, or even a soul, would you live differently? Would you protect your vibration like the sacred weapon it is? Would you finally stop negotiating with your power and start walking as if they are still watching because they are? This is the moment when you choose, not with words, but with frequency. Not with effort, but with embodiment. You don't need to be loud. You need to be clear. You don't need followers. You need coherence. Because once your dual dark light code is fully active, Your responsibility is not to teach, but to transmit. And now you know, not because I told you, but because something ancient inside you just remembered.